Steve Bone joins us, who's always more than welcome, more than welcome on Pompey Sound. And Steve, we always get the ball rolling by asking you what's highest on your mind, Pompey-wise, at the moment.
Well, it's the fact that we've got a game to look forward to. Has to be, doesn't it, this weekend after another what seems like a 3-week long international break, although it was only a fortnight. Just seems to have gone on forever. It was a bit more interesting actually, this international break, wasn't it, with Scotland's heroics and Wales having a bit of fun and keeping on Terry Devlin, but nevertheless it was still an international break, and we're glad it's over and we can get back to some proper football. Pompey v Millwall on Saturday, which is a big one, and I think we're all looking forward to it. And we're looking forward to seeing who plays and who's on the bench and everything else, aren't we?
Exactly. So my question to you is, who would you play in goal and wide on the right? Well, what would you do with the three players who are now available once again?
Well, I heard you on Pompey Sound earlier in the week, might even have been yesterday, saying, I think you said, and you'll tell me if I'm misquoting you here, I think you said surely Callum Lang will start on the bench. Did you say that?
John Messino kind of said that he might not be ready to actually play the full 90 minutes. So I was kind of quoting him. But yeah, I suspect that's the case.
I think he'll start.
Okay.
I don't think he'll play 90 minutes, so from what the manager has said. I think he'll play an hour. And then as long as he's, as long as we don't desperately need him to stay on, I think he'll come off after an hour. Or maybe even if we do desperately need him to stay on, he'll still come off. I just think a player like Lang, if he's fit, and there's been quite a long build up to him returning in this game. It was about a month ago the manager said the game that he was looking to be fit for. I just think he'll start. I think we need a good start. We need to score the game's first goal, and I think we've got a better chance to do that with Lang in the team than with him on the bench. So I think Lang will start. I think Segicic probably on the bench, because you don't need to bring in a load of, we're not desperately short of attacking players, so desperate that we need to bring all these players back at the same time. But I do think that Schmidt will start in goal. I think Bursik has done okay. I don't think you can fault him for too much, but I think Schmidt is our first choice goalkeeper, and I think he will come back into the team. I think you do that with goalies generally. So I think Schmidt and Lang to start, Lang to probably come off after an hour, Segicic on the bench. You might even see Segicic come on for Lang. That might be a pre-planned tactic, possibly. Similar sort of players, similar threats that they bring, isn't it? But looking forward to seeing all three of them back in the squad. I think we need them. One or two obviously still out, slightly longer term, that we're missing, that we know about. But you look at that last batch of 6 games. The main problem was we were short of goals, weren't we? Short of somebody to have a pop from 15 yards or something, and I think Lang will give us that, and I think Segicic, if we do see him come off the bench or wherever, will also give us that. So a lot of sort of expectation, I think, on this game. But it's against a good side. It's against Millwall, who are doing very well. So we're not just going to turn up and win. It's going to be a hard one, but I think that Lang, if he is in the starting lineup, I think that will add a little bit to the atmosphere and add a little bit to the buzz around the place at 3 o'clock.
It's good to hear you sounding so bullish. We asked AI about Millwall at the moment and the last couple of years, and their conclusion was basically that they're solid, but they're not going anywhere. They haven't had a win in 4, and the jury is out on whether they've got lots of injury problems or their injury problems are just coming good. So they're a bit of an unknown quantity.
They are, aren't they? Yeah, I've seen differing reports this week coming from their manager, I think, about this player and that player might be fit, might not be fit. So it's difficult to judge them from that. But you look in the league table, they'll be happy with where they are at the moment. They're 6th. They're in the playoff positions. They've had a few years where they've got very close to getting in the playoffs. I think I'm right in saying they haven't actually made the Championship playoffs in recent years. Could be wrong there, but I don't think they have. But they're always there or thereabouts. They're always sort of top half or mid-table, and then have a good run towards the end of the season. It's just putting that into together for them into a whole good season where they stay in that top 6 and maybe even threaten top 2. Don't think they're quite at that level yet. They've got quite a good record down here in recent years. Well, they won last year, didn't they? The rearranged night game a couple of months after the electrics went, just as we were about to play them. And they beat us with a late goal at their place as well. So that'll give them a bit of hope as well. But hopefully that will spur us on as well. I'm sure our manager will be reminding our players that they did the double over us last season. But yeah, solid's a good word for them. They're not a team you can expect to beat 4 or 5-0. It's going to be tight. It's probably not going to be more than 1 goal in it, I don't think. Just hope it goes our way, not theirs.
Looking forward to your predictions already. There's a very interesting interview on Football 360, an in-depth interview with Adrian Segicic, and he's asked about the difference between the Australian A-League and the Championship. And he said, well, it's basically having to play a game every 3 days in the sometimes freezing cold.
Yeah, not used to either of those two things in Australia, I suppose, are they? It must be quite different, which is possibly, part of the reason that various Australians have come here and have not sort of settled in straight away and have not hit the ground running. It's quite an acclimatisation to make, isn't it? Weather-wise and schedule-wise, I suppose. That's. I've not seen the interview. But,
no, I'm sorry. I tantalised you with that. It's a very, very good piece. He also talks about the fact that he was told by everybody he knew that he was too small to make it in the Championship because, they said, the Championship is the hardest league physically in the world.
Harder than the Premier League, I suppose, physically, they're saying. Yeah. Interesting point there, isn't it? But and they're right. But that's not to say that small players can't have a part to play and can't do well. I just think you can't afford to have too many of them. I think if you're going to have people of Segicic's sort of stature and build, a couple of them, if you use them in the right way, can be good, because they can nip around, they can pop up in places where the opposition don't expect them. They can surprise you, but you wouldn't want a whole team of them, would you? Because I think you'd just be battered if you had too many. If you had too many in your defence, I think you'd struggle. I think in your front line you need a bit of height and bulk, and certainly in your back line you need it. In between, you can get away with a couple of Segicic type players, if we can put it like that.
Yeah, and moving around the pitch, let's look at the left back problem, because let's be blunt, it is a problem. And an eagle-eyed fan, we think it was a fan, it may have been a journalist, spotted somebody they didn't recognise taking part in an 11-on-11 training match at the training ground, and it turns out to be a bloke called Bennett, who is a specialist left back who used to be an acquaintance of John Messino at Oxford, but John Messino is saying absolutely with great clarity, we are not considering him for this club, we're just giving him the opportunity to stay match fit. What do you reckon?
I think he's I know that the manager does sometimes lead us down a blind alley, doesn't he, with some of his who's going to be available when, but I think he's probably right in this case. I also read that one of the benefits for Pompey in having this Bennett in training this week has been so that they can play training matches. They can play an 11-a-side game or whatever with a recognised left back, testing whoever's going to be playing on our right wing, which kind of makes sense, doesn't it? So it's benefiting Bennett, but it's benefiting us as well to have an experienced natural left back out there on the training pitch. Whether we could sign him if we needed to, I don't know. There are rules about how many different teams a player can be with during a year or a season, aren't there? But I don't know if that comes into it. But no, it sounds like it is just a little operation to help us and help the player. because we have got options. There was an interesting piece that I think Neil Allen did, talking about 6 different options to cover for Conor Ogilvie, including a transfer in January, a free agent now, somebody from the academy, Boat, who's a sort of left-sided central defender who has played a little bit at left back but didn't look all that comfortable there, I didn't think, and my favoured one, Jordan Williams, because I thought Williams was very good when he came on at left back against Wrexham when Connor was injured and had to go off. I thought he looked very good. He defended well and also helped Murphy on that side find a bit of space. So I would hope that Williams is seen as the answer short term. January the 1st that might change, and if we've struggled with him or he's struggled in that position, we could then go out and buy someone. But I don't think we're going to rush into anything. But we'll get an idea of what the manager's thinking is on Saturday, I suppose.
Yeah, and we're also looking forward to getting some idea of what kind of additions the club want to make during the January window. John Messina has said that they may not know right up until December the 31st, because injuries happen, exactly what their needs are going to be. So they've obviously got a pretty long options list. They need one.
They do, yeah. And I think I've said before in conversation with you, I hope we don't sign... I don't think we need to sign 6 or 7 players in January. I just think we need to sign 2 or 3 good players that we know, or know as far as you can know, will be able to come into that team if called upon and make a difference. As I've said before, a Callum Lang style signing in January is just what you need. Gives you a bit of extra sort of fuel for the rest of the journey, doesn't it, through the season? I don't think we need any more promising 19-year-olds who aren't ready for the first team. I think we've got enough of them, to be honest. I'm not knocking them. Every squad needs them. You can't just be thinking of today. You've got to think of tomorrow and next season and everything else. But I think in January, because of the position we're in at the moment in the league, we need to think sort of short to medium term rather than long term. And I'd imagine that's what they'll be doing. But it's a good point about December 31st, because not only do you not know what you will need, and it can change on the 31st of December, the list of who's available can change on the 31st of December. Because if you've got your eye on, let's say we've got our eye on a left back who's doing well for Bolton, for example, just plucking that out of the air, you might be able to make an initial approach, and there might be some informal talks between agents and things about a move, and then on the 30th of December Bolton's other left back gets injured and suddenly he's not available. I think Richard Hughes has spoken in the past about the difficulties of planning for a transfer window that is during the season. It's much harder than the summer transfer window, because the summer transfer window starts with every club having stopped and not playing again until that window is closed, which clearly makes it easier for them to sort of buy and sell. They know what they need at the start and it doesn't change, but that's a bit different in the middle of the season.
That is a good point, well made. I've been looking forward to asking you this one, since we stumbled on a little nugget, and it is this. We were looking at the next Middlesbrough manager, and we looked at the betting as offered by, I think it was Sky Bet, one of the major bookmakers, and amongst the list of contenders that they are offering a price on is John Messina, and he sits there in quite exalted company alongside the likes of Gareth Southgate, Wayne Rooney, that might not be such a good bet, Ruud van Nistelrooy, and Michael Carrick. So we wondered whether a conversation had taken place.
I don't think a conversation needs to take place for somebody to appear in a bookie's list of players. I think, of managers. I think some of these bookies lists, there's obviously some science involved. They're looking at who's betting on what and who's available and trends and so on. But I also think you can be fooled quite easily by those lists, because sometimes there'll be somebody in there who's got absolutely no chance of getting a particular job for whatever reason, and they'll still be 12 to 1 or something. I'm not surprised to see John in that sort of company, to be honest, for that sort of job. You look at what he's done with us. He's taken us from middle of League One to the Championship with a title-winning season in his first full season. He's kept us in the Championship so far, a year and a half. I know he's had ups and downs, but he's done pretty well for us. So he's going to be linked with other jobs, and he's going to be linked with jobs at clubs with bigger budgets than us. That's a fact of football life, isn't it? I suppose going to have to get used to that. And at some point he might go for one. If there's one that suits him and he thinks he can't take Pompey any further, he will probably take it at some point. Pompey. I'm sure Pompey's owners are aware of that and are doing everything they can to sort of make him feel wanted here and make him sort of feel that there is a plan long term, and he's very much at the centre of that plan. But that's not going to stop you getting linked with other jobs, and the way that clubs have such a turnover of managers now at our sort of level and just below. They some of them seem to get fed up with managers after 5 minutes, don't they, or after 5 matches? So there's going to be other vacancies over the winter that John will be linked with.
Have Pompey got a succession strategy, and if so, how far down the list does Marlon Pack come?
I'm sure they have, because I think all clubs, to an extent, all clubs in the top couple of divisions, I think, have. That's as part of football these days, to look to the next chapter, the next sort of era at your club. I know teams like Brighton are very good at it. They probably already know who their next manager is going to be, even though the current one is probably quite possibly going to be there for a while. I'm sure Championship clubs do. It's an extension of the recruitment department, really, isn't it? You're always looking at what players you want to bring in, and as an extension of that or an offshoot of that, you're probably looking at who you would want to be your next manager if the current one went. So I think there's a succession plan. I wouldn't think Marlon Pack is too close to the top of the list at the moment. I think he's someone who they would want to sort of bring on and look at as moving into more coaching when his playing days decrease and when his playing days end. And I would think that he quite likes the idea of that as well, being on the coaching staff. But it's quite a long way from being an experienced player at a Championship club to being its manager. I think there are exceptions to that. Massinio himself, I suppose, being an exception. He went pretty quickly from being a player, then a player coach at Oxford, to being a League One manager. So it's not impossible. It happens more these days than it used to. It happens quicker probably than it used to. So I think Marlon is in the pecking order there somewhere. Okay. But I think there's probably a couple of other stages for the club and for him to go through first.
Lost me again. I was wondering,
yes.
Do you have any sympathy with people who are saying the time has come for John Massino to move on and we ought to clear out the entire squad? That lot.
No. I don't know what they want. Really, why would we want to do that now? We've got up into the Championship on a not particularly competitive budget as far as we know. We've finished 16th last season. We've got every chance of finishing 16th or higher this season. Let's just let's not worry about the need to sort of rip everything up and start again. You want to tweak things, and you always want to strengthen the squad, and that is what we're trying to do, and the owners know that. I don't think a change of manager would do us any good at all at this time, and I don't, even if we're, if you were to say the same thing to me, if we happen to be in the bottom 3 in February, would that be the time to change the manager? I'm still not sure that it would be then, because I think John would possibly still be he knows the squad and he knows the club and he knows what the Championship's all about now. I think even at that stage he might still be the best bet to keep us up and get us turn us around again. And the squad, as I say, it needs some additions here and there. It always does, but it's not a good squad, and one that we were applauding at the end of last season hasn't become a bad squad just because of the last 6 games.
The other issue worth getting your thoughts on is who gets to start in the number 9 shirt, because Mackenzie Kirk is starting to make quite a strong argument. He just looks a little bit sharper, a little bit more committed perhaps than Colby, who somehow looks just a little bit, tiny bit sluggish.
Yeah, I think he does at the moment. He looks a bit lost. I think he's not quite. Colby is not quite getting into the prime positions that you want your number 9 to be in as often as he was last season, or in the promotion season in the league below. I think Colby would. I'm one of his biggest fans, but he possibly would benefit from a couple of games where he's not the first choice and he's not starting. I'd still have him on the bench, because even if you're starting Kirk as your number 9, you can't expect Kirk to suddenly start playing 90 minutes every game, especially when next week we've got the Wednesday, Saturday, and another midweek soon. But I just think a couple of games in a row for Kirk to start and Bishop to have to wait his turn might not be a bad thing. As I said last week, I actually think you could do worse than play Lang as the centre forward against Millwall. I don't think we will, but it wouldn't be the worst idea ever, I think, if it happened. But I suppose if the manager's only talking about giving him 55-60 minutes, maybe he won't want to do that. Maybe I want to play him in his natural position as one of the 3 behind the number 9, at least to begin with. But I think there's a case for, if you were to start Kirk over Bishop on Saturday, I don't think you could complain at that. I don't think Bishop could complain. It's a long time since he scored a goal. Kirk did get one the other week, didn't he, against Coventry? So I think he's earning his chance. But equally, if Colby starts, good on him. I bet we'll all be behind him. We just want one to go in off of his shin from 2 yards in the 85th minute or something, don't we? That will do his confidence the world of good, and maybe we'll get him on a little run. It was at the end of last season. He's scoring hat-tricks at Norwich and things. So it's not that he can't do it at this level. He can. He just needs a bit of a confidence boost from somewhere.
Okay, a couple of other talking points before we get on to the cherished Steve Bone prediction. John Swift's ideal position is, according to Steve Bone, and is Steve Bone still being patient about Connor Chaplin?
Two killers to end the chat there. 2 difficult questions, those. I'm not sure about Swift. I don't think we've seen him have a run of games in one position to be able to say, yes, that is it, that is where he belongs. I thought at times he was okay next to I think he was playing next to Dazal when he was in the deeper midfield role, wasn't he, early season, and then he was played further forward. I kind of think he's probably, if you were to ask him, he would say he wants to be wants to be the number 10. Wants to be central and in the 3 behind the striker, probably. But I don't know. I quite like him as one of the 2 in midfield. I've even thought in a couple of recent games maybe Dazal needs a bit of a rest. So would you try Pack and Swift together, or is that too much experience, too many years together in that partnership? I don't know. In terms of it's a lot of experience, but is there a little bit of a lack of pace possibly between them? So that's a long way of saying I don't know about Swift, and I don't know if he'll play. Will he play on Saturday if Lang's coming back in and Segacic is on the bench? Is there room for him? I suppose what you might see at some point is Swift coming in and Chaplin getting a rest. But Chaplin it's been a slow burner with him, but there have been signs. There have been more signs in the last sort of 2 or 3 games, particularly the Wrexham game at home, that he's finding his feet and finding his place in that team. He's another one like Bishop who just needs one of those 25-yard fizzers to go into the bottom corner, and then he'll be away. I think just not quite happened for him so far. So I don't think I would I don't know. I don't think I would rest Chaplin just yet, but I would be thinking about it fairly soon if he doesn't start to score and or assist with the goal chart.
Okay, then it is time to get the dreaded prediction. You seem to me to be either at the moment or recent times you've been either so red hot the bookies are running scared, or well, just a little bit off the mark.
Fell very off the mark, yeah. Yes, I've predicted the right scores, but as Eric Morecambe would say, not necessarily in the right order. I'm going to go on Saturday for a 2-1 Pompey win. A morale-boosting, rousing 2-1 Pompey win. With Callum Lang to score one of the goals.
Yep. Okay, you said morale and I heard morale. I just, therefore, opportunistically want to ask you whether you've kept up with the human story of his retirement from playing football and how he has dealt with, at one point in his career, being a World Cup player and now being retired at the age of 28 and trying to persuade people not to be sympathetic towards him because it would only upset him.
Yeah, I've read a couple of pieces. BBC did quite a good one with him on their website. Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? You can't imagine. There aren't that many jobs really where you would go from being that high in the pecking order, to playing in a World Cup as a footballer, whatever the equivalent of that is in other fields, to then having to then not playing much again after that. Let's be honest, he played one season after that, didn't he, really, or season and a half, and then having to retire a year later and not do something completely different because it looks like he's going to try and go into coaching. But it must be so hard, when you're still in your 20s, his late 20s. He would have had another 8 or 10 years at a good level if he'd stayed fit, if he hadn't got those injuries, and that's a lot of playing career to lose, isn't it? I do think he's got his head screwed on right, and I always thought he was a very intelligent player, and I do think he'll make a good coach. Whether that's possibly not something he wanted to do just yet. It may be something he was already thinking about doing later. But even if he gets a good chance as a coach, it's still not easy, is it, to have made that transition so much sooner than you expected to. And of course, next year's World Cup is just going to remind him of where he was at fairly recently, isn't it? Especially if Wales get there, they'll be thinking, well, who's taken my place, sort of thing. But no, best of luck to him, because he did a good job for us, and we hope he is successful.
Steve, as ever, good words. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Talk soon.